morning, gentlemen. It's very bright sunshine all around. And obviously, I'm going to talk about something bright. I'm going to talk about the era of Donald Trump. Donald Trump became the president on the 20th of January, though he had won the election about 3 months earlier. But in that period, he has created tremendous impression. In other words, he has shaken the roots of the world. And many of the old notions which existed for decades have just vanished. In fact, you see, what has happened is that the world has changed within a month and a half because of this one man, Donald Trump. Donald Trump is now the chief executive of the United States, and obviously, he's a man with a mission, and he's a man who wishes to have a place in world history, and maybe he is aspiring to be the greatest American president after Roosevelt. So we'll have to just examine what exactly is Donald Trump, what is his world, and whether he's going to succeed. Because everything depends on success. And if you can't succeed in what you have tried, then it's going to be the big drawback in your life. Well, gentlemen, Donald Trump, once he became president, put into effect what he had been talking for a long time. He's a very volatile man, and the first thing he had been talking about is the trade imbalance. Now, that is something which I think is in the benefit of America. If you all remember, the Hindu god Kuber, who is the god of wealth, also had his coffers denuded, became empty. And that is a thing which must one keep in mind. Because when the United States, till the time of Joe Biden, was heading the world, it acted as if it had unlimited money, unlimited cash to spare, and millions of dollars were just handed down gratis to various people, various countries, various organizations. And the result for America comparatively was very poor. The American taxpayer had to pay a lot of money, a lot of taxes to survey, to help this flagrant gifts being given by the American presidents. For example, the NATO alliance was entirely in existence because of the United States, and almost 70% of the budget was coming from America. What was happening? The European powers were having a ball, riding piggyback on the American horse. At the same time, their defense commitment was very low, and all the money was being utilized for welfare, and the people there will have a good time with free medical and pensions and whatnot. This was at the cost of the United States. Similarly, the United States was subsidizing the defense of Japan and the Far East against China. And the United States also got involved in unnecessary wars, like in Ukraine and Afghanistan. And I think in Afghanistan they lost $2 trillion. Just imagine if all this money had been saved, what would have been the life of the American people? It would have been simply glorious, but it didn't happen that way. And Trump wanted to put a stop to it. That's the first point, let's bear in mind. Trump wanted to put a stop to this flagrant donations of money and wealth and the returns for which was zero. The second thing which he was very clear about is that there had to be some reciprocal arrangements in trade. Most of the countries with which America was trading, the deficit was always against the Americans. That means they were paying more and getting less. Net result is that their trade imbalance was affecting America and millions of dollars were being lost. So Trump was very clear he would enforce a reciprocal tariff on all countries. And this he has gone to do with a vengeance. The third point, which he was very clear, was that he wanted to stop the Ukraine war and the Gaza war. He's on it in a big way. And I think in both the cases he's going to succeed, both in Ukraine as well as in Gaza. In the bargain, he has ruffled a lot of feathers. The Western alliance, which was used to all the free perks, that is, France, England, and Germany, are now at the end, and they tried their level best that the war in Ukraine should continue. The British Prime Minister, the French President both visited Washington to persuade Trump that the war should continue. And they were appealing to old sentiments that we are the oldest allies and whatnot, and we are brothers and things like that. But Donald Trump has not taken the bait. Even the Ukrainian president went all the way to Washington. He was called to the White House, and there he behaved in an abominable manner in the sense he insulted the American president. But that was because he had a backing from the back, basically from France and England. But as I told you, water finds its level, and it found its level. And Zelensky, when he came back, realized the harsh truth when the Americans stopped the supply of weapons to Ukraine, and the Russians began to pound the Ukrainians, and Zelensky didn't know what to do. The net result was he decided to throw in the towel, and the British, who were talking of boots on the ground in Ukraine, had to eat a humble pie when they were asked a question by Donald Trump in his meeting with the British Prime Minister that would England be able to fight Russia alone? I think all the British Prime Minister could do was smile. There's no answer. Similarly, he was trying to egg on Zelensky, and moment he came back, he thought he is a great hero, the British Prime Minister. He called a meeting in London and gave $2.8 billion, which was confiscated money of the Russian assets in England, as a loan to Ukraine to continue to fight the war. But the Russian offensive has now taken a different turn, and the Russians are gaining territory by the mile and not the yard. And Ukraine is at the end of the teaser. So, net result of all this has been now that Ukraine is breathing its last in the oxygen tank. Obviously, there was no choice, and the Ukrainian president has thrown in the towel. He sent a letter to Donald Trump that I will follow your leadership and I am ready to meet Vladimir Putin. So all the bravado went out like the air from a balloon. And the same thing with the French and the British. A lot of talk. This talk was good before 1939 when they had big empires. But all that is over, history. And now England is being classified by many people as an Islamic state, as slowly the Islamics are creeping into the vitals of the British economy. France, which has got a 9% minority community, doesn't know how to handle it. And all talk of that the French is going to give nuclear cover to other parts of Europe and not appreciated by them. And even the Western alliance is frayed. Italy Poland, and so many other countries are not interested in putting boots on the ground. That means sending soldiers to Ukraine. And I think very soon there will be a ceasefire in Ukraine. Now, what's happening otherwise, gentlemen? Gaza is another thing. And here, Trump is very clear as to what he's going to do. Very clear. He has said that the entire Gaza population should be emptied out. I mean, you can say it's a humanitarian disaster that you have to take nearly 2 million people out from Gaza and settle them as per Trump in Egypt or Tunisia and Jordan. And sadly, or I mean, it's a sad thing that such a large population should be taken out. But that I feel is the only solution if you want peace in Gaza. Because if this population continues, Hamas will come back and the battles will continue. That means it will become round three. Hamas is not going to leave so easily. The Egyptians had a plan. They held a conference lately, and in that conference, they proposed that Gaza be reconstructed in three phases. But there have been no takers. The Americans not in favor of this, and Saudi Arabia and the UAE as opposed to it. So General Sisi, who is the dictator of uh, Egypt, has been left holding the baby. He has nothing he can do. He doesn't have any economy. He's got nothing, and he's entirely dependent on the Americans, and he's going to be in serious problem. And another serious problem is going to Hamas. Hamas has said they're going to execute the remaining hostages, out of which three are Americans. And Donald Trump has told them that if they do it, then it will be hell for them. I mean, he's a man who has identified the problem. That's one thing which I will tell you, which the previous American presidents were not ready to do. He has defined terrorism as an Islamic preserve, and you can see umpteen speeches where he has said that all the terrorism which is inheriting is from the Islamic nation. You don't have terrorism in humanity from, say, Japan or from Mexico or Canada or something like that, but you have terrorism emanating only from countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, Persia, the Middle East, Gaza. So he has identified Islamic State as the source of terror. But at the same time, he's a very pragmatic man, if you see it. Pragmatic in the sense he's gone ahead now and sent a letter to the Iran president. He would like, I think, some form of contact with Iran, and he's also approached the Russians to see that if they can have a via media with Iran. So that's a very strong stand he's taking because he's got one very clear mind. And in his mind, he's basically, I can tell you, what I'm thinking is he's wanting to break the Russia China axis. You know, the Germans had the Pact of Steel between Italy, Germany, and France. So similar pact exists between Russia and China, and he wants to break that because both these countries are monolith powers, and America, I don't think, and Donald Trump has realized, can face them alone because having allies like say Japan or England or France, they are all powers which are has been were powers at one stage. They got nothing now. They got an aging population. Their economy is in doldrums. They are facing Islamic insurrections in their countries, and they have no colonies. They are nothing. They're zero. So he has no ally, Americans, and the one ally which he would like is India. But India is going to not hard. Is going to play hard to get. Now, his plan, as I've told you, is to break this alliance, and that is how he is going to give Russia a lot of leeway in Ukraine. I think the peace deal is going to hammer out. would mean a ceasefire as it is now, number one. Number two, in the negotiation that will follow, a certain amount of area of which has been occupied by Russia would remain with Russia. The Crimea would remain with Russia.